The NBA draft lottery happened, and I can literally not remember a single time, perhaps in my lifetime, that this many fan bases were this upset on the same night for this many different reasons. The Boston Celtics fans are evaporating right now as the potential reality of Jason Tatum's horrendous injury sets in. Utah Jazz fans, New Orleans Pelicans fans, Washington Wizards fans are very upset. And naturally, Knicks fans are probably elated. Dallas Mavericks fans are absolutely elated. Spurs fans are licking their chops that they may have just gotten the requisite pieces to get Giannis Antetokounmpo to San Antonio to play with Victor Wembanyama. And yes, sir, Zodiac Jack, it is 4 a.m. But as a basketball junkie, I must tell you, this is what I think about at 4 a.m. I think about basketball at 4 a.m. And I got to tell you that something really strange is happening where, because the Dallas Mavericks won the NBA draft lottery, there seems to be a growing contingent, if not a loud consensus on the internet, that the lottery was rigged, that every team got screwed, and that the Dallas Mavericks made this deal with Adam Silver. Now, I love to play the hypothetical. I've never been someone who's ever said that the draft lottery was rigged. I told y'all that the draft lottery wasn't rigged when you told me that the Raptors couldn't get Cooper Flagg. The league will never allow it. I told you the draft lottery is not rigged, guys. But I got to tell you that I do enjoy playing the other side as well. I do at least enjoy thinking about what if I'm wrong. And I don't think that I'm wrong here, but I'm going to present you with at least a version of this that could have happened. I'll tell you why it could have happened. And then I'll give you my 100% rationale for why everything you think about the NBA draft is wrong, why you probably don't know enough about this to make a conclusion about it, and why almost every year there are allegations that the NBA draft is rigged, because that's the way our minds work. We look for patterns, and look, there's a really interesting pattern here. There's a remarkable coincidence that followed up with another remarkable coincidence. They both happen to benefit they both involved a lot of the same players, let's just say. And of course, I think a lot of this starts with the Patrick Ewing draft lottery, which was rigged, which we can certainly, say was rigged. Let's play the hypothetical out. What's the charge here? The charge is as follows. The Dallas Mavericks were given instruction by Adam Silver and the league to trade away their 26-year-old superstar to the Los Angeles Lakers, a team which is the NBA's marquee franchise in their second biggest market, the Los Angeles market, playing with arguably the second or third most marketable star in league history in his twilight. They didn't feel that ratings were doing well. They did not feel that the future of the Los Angeles Lakers franchise was secure with Anthony Davis, given his numerous injuries and his advanced age. And so Adam Silver put in a call to, team player Nico Harrison and said, listen, this is what's going to happen. You're going to deliver Luka Doncic to the Lakers on a silver platter, and we're going to take care of you at the draft. Okay. Let's assume that this actually happened. The charge is that all the other teams got screwed. Now, again, as promised, I promised to keep a straight face through this. Let's pretend this actually happened. The number one reason that this, should have happened, or, at least in theory, could have happened, is because it helped the entire NBA. The NBA has a really big ad deal, or, streaming deal with all these players coming in. It has infused the league with a tremendous amount of capital, cash that every team is going to benefit from. All the owners, all the valuation, everybody's money is going up because of the Amazon and NBC deals and Peacock and all that stuff, and the streaming rights deals. All of these media rights deals benefit literally everybody. The league as a whole is represented by governors and owners. And sorry, I apologize here. Did a lot of screaming on X Live tonight. So What was I saying? Yes. So the league decides that it is in the interest of literally everybody in the league for the Los Angeles Lakers to be a draw. We know historically that when certain markets do well, the league does well. When the Lakers do well, when the Knicks do well, when the Boston Celtics do well, the league does well. When the Denver Nuggets do well, when the Oklahoma City Thunder do well, nobody really benefits from that. It is when these major markets have a major star and a major draw, that's when the league does well. If you want to be really honest about it, Kobe and Shaq were really good for Los Angeles, but they were also really good for the NBA. Michael Jordan was really good for the NBA, but he's also very good for Chicago. Michael Jordan being in Chicago was better for the NBA than Michael Jordan being in Portland. All of these things are proven to be true. And of course, this conspiracy of the league rigging things, this goes back a long time. When the Cleveland Cavaliers won the rights to draft their hometown kid, granted from Akron, but nevertheless, Akron, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, the Ohio born LeBron James, there was a lot of conspiracy theory. Oh, wow. The league gifted the hometown kid, Derrick Rose. It was the same thing, right? With Derrick Rose, it was even more of a conspiracy because Derrick Rose was not only a hometown kid for Chicago, but the Chicago Bulls moved up quite a bit to get Derrick Rose. I believe they had around a 1.2 or 1.7 chance. So I understand that throughout history, we've heard this. We heard that the league rigged the draft lottery before the Minnesota Timberwolves were sold by giving them the number one pick because it made the deal more profitable for Minnesota. We heard that the league gifted Zion to the Pelicans in exchange for the Pelicans giving Anthony Davis to the aforementioned Los Angeles Lakers. We've heard so many of these conspiracies before, and it, again, if the Pelicans had won, if the Wizards had won, if the Sixers had won, if the Jazz had won, if the Hornets had won, I'm sure there would have been a conspiracy. But none of those teams would have been as improbable at winning this draft than the Dallas Mavericks. Now, nobody in the world could have ever predicted that the Dallas Mavericks would win the draft lottery. It's statistically impossible for anyone to have put Cooper Flagg on the Dallas Mavericks and said the Dallas Mavericks had a shot. Let me show you something. This is a month ago, by the way. When you're making this commentary right now, you're thinking vibe and you're thinking like philosophy. This is not how organizations are thinking about this at all. I tell you what's on the line for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, it's worth noting. Last year, I mean, look at what's the prize at the top of this draft. It's Cooper Flagg. That's a really big thing. And for a team like Dallas that just traded away their young superstar, netting Cooper Flagg, you're saying they can't. But let me play devil's advocate here. Right now, Dallas is sitting at 13th in the draft lottery. Right. Remind you, this is a team that has already shown you they're willing to miss the playoffs to tank when they did it like 2 years ago for Derek Lively. So there's some organizational, memory here of this team has done this exact thing before. And by the way, they tanked with a healthy Luka Doncic that year with Kyrie Irving. This year, Kyrie Irving could be out for most of next season. So here's what's on the line. Right now, Dallas has a 4.8% chance sitting at 13th at a top 4 pick. If they move down 2 slots to 11, that 4.8 jumps to 9.4. Mm-hmm. That's a big difference. And I'll remind you, last year that the Atlanta Hawks went from 9 to 1. With the way the draft is flattened out a little bit, this is actually way more possible than it was like 15 years ago. So I'm just saying they could just lose the next 2 games. They got nothing to gain by winning these games at all. But nobody saw it coming. Nobody could have ever seen it coming. Nobody could have ever predicted this. Okay. But that doesn't stop the conspiracy talk, right? You still want to say it's a conspiracy. The NBA is rigged, everyone's upset, etc. Let me entertain the idea that this was fixed. Not rigged, but fixed, because there's a distinction. Rigged implies a lack of complicity from everybody else around. Fixed implies everybody signed off on it. Luka on the Lakers pretty much fixed the NBA's attention deficit problem, period. There has been such an emphasis from Adam Silver to make this media rights deal work for their partners because there's a lot of money on the line for everybody. So if you and I, let's just say me, myself, and 29 of you, we own a part, like a share in an entity called the NBA, and we as a whole, right, are signing this media rights deal, and we as a whole will all eat better, and our players will eat better, and everybody will basically benefit off of this deal. Then it is in all of our vested interests, all of our ownership, all of our governors, for us to put this product in the right place, which means we are all making decisions that impact all of us, which means when one person starts blasting the Chinese government, we all suffer, which means when one person decides to make some racist statement, Donald Sterling, it impacts all of us. It impacts the brand of the league. When one person gets caught for doping or, one of those scandals, it impacts everybody. Ja Morant, we're seeing the league crack down on Ja Morant. They don't want an image problem right now. We're seeing the league whip out, big fines and shit for any player making obscene gestures and whatever. They do not want a problem right now. So everybody benefits when the league is more watched, which means if everybody can agree that the Lakers doing well is good for all of us, then we will all sign off on this little handshake deal that Nico Harrison and Rob Pelinka made, and Adam Silver will sign off on it as well to say, look, y'all want to make this deal. Can we all agree, the 30 teams, that in order to facilitate this deal with the limited assets that Dallas has to make this deal, with the limited assets that the Lakers have to make this deal without completely gutting their roster, because they really didn't have very much else. They gave up a first round pick. What more did you want them to give up? Jackson Hayes? Is that swinging the deal for you? There's nothing on the Lakers roster which would have made sense for Luka Doncic. Let's just be real about it. They don't have the draft assets. They don't have 15 first round picks to give up. They gave up whatever picks they could give up. They gave up a good young player. They gave up, a borderline top 6, top 7 player in Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic. And then they kept saying, I almost think like, if this is fixed, then kind of adds new meaning. It kind of adds new meaning to Nico Harrison saying defense wins championships, huh? It's kind of funny, right? Because you say defense wins championships. You say we don't believe that we can win with this guy who's an basically an offensive oriented player. And then what happens? You end up falling ass backwards from 11 to 1 into the best defensive prospect since Victor Wembanyama. It's kind of interesting, right? So I guess we'll see if defense wins championships in Dallas. So that's the conspiracy side. Let's assume for a second that the league made a handshake deal with Nico Harrison and, the ownership group at Dallas to say, do us a favor, we'll do you a favor. The only way this can ever work, the only way this would ever work, is if more than half the league signed off on it. Because a lot of people figured to get screwed in this exchange. A lot. The Washington Wizards, the Pelicans, the Raptors, the Nets, all these teams, they are all their own billion-dollar entities themselves. They all had a lot of money to gain by getting Cooper Flagg. You took Cooper Flagg off their plate. You must give them something in return. And what you gave them in return was the league will prosper, the ratings will be higher, and our media rights deal will be saved, and our ratings will be saved, and our media partners will be happy, and they won't pull the plug or change the deal or, renege on anything. Because let's just be honest, everybody has to benefit when we're talking about the exchange of billions of dollars. Amazon has not signed up for a declining product. They have signed up for an ascending product. They will have a great deal of influence over All-Star Weekend, playoffs, play-in tournament. We have seen Adam Silver implement change after change after change after change in order to what? In order to boost ratings. All the fines that the league is handing out, all the rule changes from moving towards grifting to moving away from grifting. When you listen to Adam Silver, you get the feeling that this is a very business minded, very money minded individual who definitely understands that he is not calling the final shots. The final shots are being called by the owners, the vested interests, the partners, and everybody involved. And ultimately, the people who are paying to broadcast your product. They have done everything in their power to make themselves more appetizing for the modern fan. And I'm including Adam Silver literally going on a podcast interview with Kenny Beecham where he was talking about a lot of this stuff. Okay. Now, let me flip all of this and tell you why rigging the draft is a lot harder than you think. Now, over the years, I've been a very, very loud proponent for why this is not possible. Why this is not possible was actually explained to me 10 years ago by someone who's actually sat in the room while this draft lottery thing happens. And I want to explain how it happens because I think that a lot of the reason why a lot of people scream conspiracy is because they can't make sense of probability. Not to be rude, but I think a lot of people failed statistics or maybe haven't brushed up on their grade 6, grade 7 math in a while, and maybe, just are kind of stupid. So, maybe that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people who believe that the frozen envelope shit still happens. I think there's a lot of people out there who probably believe that the draft lottery is just a bunch of people and there's like 14 balls with 14 teams and they just pop up. And I've heard so many talking points which are so ridiculous, like, oh, how come they don't broadcast it? Hey, dummy, you can find the clips. You can find the clips. They have broadcasted in the past. I don't know if they broadcasted this year, but they've broadcasted plenty of times. Many of the years where people said it was rigged. There are so many people in that room, so many people in that room, including representatives from every team who is at the lottery, including the accounting firm, a third party, accounting firm, including the manufacturers of the machine, by the way, that creates the draft lottery, that does the lottery selection is the same machine manufacturer that does, the Powerball stuff. So miss me with that shit. That 70, 80 people in a room all were completely duped by this magic trick. It's not a fucking magic trick. It's simple math. Let me explain how it works. So again, when we talk about the draft lottery, what does it mean to have a 14% chance at number one? What does that actually mean? Well, what it means is that you have 1,000 possible combinations of how four balls, I believe 4 balls or 5 balls, I can't remember, come up. And if you are one of the top 3 teams, you have identical odds, 14%, 14%, 14%, which is to say you have a number of possible combinations, which is to say 140 possible combinations, okay, of those 4 balls that can come up. So let's just say the balls that come up are 1, 3, 7, and 9. 1, 3, 7, and 9. Now, 1, 3, 7, and 9 will be a code that will be assigned to a specific team. Every team has a set number of codes. The Raptors, who had a 7.5% chance at Cooper Flagg, would have had a 7.5% chance, which is to say they would have had 75, right? And Charlotte and Washington and Utah, the teams that were bottom 3, I believe those were the teams that were bottom 3, they would have had 140 combinations. So of those 1,000 combinations, that's how it works. Dallas, in this case, would have had 18. 1.8 of 1,000, that's 18. So they would have had 18 possible combinations to get this. Or is it 17? I don't remember. It was 1.7 or 1.8% chance. The point here is that as the draft lottery odds flatten out, number one, it becomes way more probable for teams to jump. And we're seeing now back years, 3 years in a row, that the worst team in the league fell down to number 5. What does that actually mean? That just means they didn't draw one of the 4 combinations that came up. Because after those first 4 combinations come up, the rest of it is done in reverse order. That's all it is. That's how simple it is. So if you want to suggest that somebody rigged this, I would like you to explain to me how they did it. I want you to explain to me how one nefarious individual, to the benefit of one specific organization, rigged the draft lottery where it is damn near impossible, where the entire thing is audited, where the machine is audited before the draft lottery drawing. I want you to explain to me how, without the consent of everyone in that room agreeing that this is how it's going to roll out, I want you to explain to me how one team disproportionately benefits as the other 13 teams just sit there and say, well, I guess, that's just, happened that way. We have no complaints. We have no complaints. I'll tell you right now, if I'm the Raptors ownership and I get wind of this, I'm suing the league. I'm suing the NBA. You have cost me a considerable amount of money by taking Cooper Flagg off my table. You have cost me a disproportionate amount of valuation on my own franchise. Do you understand what Cooper Flagg does to the valuation of an organization, at least in the interim, before we figure out who he is as a player? Do you know what he does to ticket sales? Do you know what he does to merchandise sales? His jersey will be a top 3 jersey in the league next year, guaranteed, unless he's a complete bust. Top 3 to top 5. If Giannis shifts teams, his jersey will be high too. This is big money. This is not millions of dollars. This is not my bank account and your bank account. This is billions of dollars. Cooper Flagg moves billions, just like Luka moves billions, just like LeBron moves billions, just like every superstar. Well, not every superstar, but those big names, the Wembys, they move billions. They move industries. And in order to move that type of money around, in order to take that money away from someone and hand it to somebody else, you have to have consent. So that's all I'm saying. To all of you conspiracy theorists out there who are saying, oh my God, I'm a Washington Wizards fan and my team got shafted. No, they didn't. And if your team got shafted, then the point of this live is to tell you that they agreed to get shafted because it helped them. That's all. Now, a second dominant conversation that seemed to be very, very prevalent on Twitter today was that the Raptors falling from 7 to 9 is the end of the world. Check this out. Check it out, man. Hang on. So this is one of my, let's say, like, go-to draft analysts. And
their new pick, they'll grab Duke 7-footer Kaman Malawach. Malawach, to my eye, is going to have a pretty narrow draft range near the top.
Cool. So the Raptors get number 9 in this mock draft. Kevin O'Connor released his big board. I don't think Kaman Malawach was top 10. And to all of you people out there saying all hope is lost, no, it's not. No, it's not. So here's my selling point. I did a lot of selling on why this isn't really that bad at our draft live lottery, reaction video. Also did a little bit on Twitter Spaces. Shout outs to everyone who showed up to that. But here's what I'll say to you. Last year, the Toronto Raptors walked in a so-called weak draft, which was not very top heavy. They walked in with the 19th pick, the 31st pick. They ended up acquiring the 45th pick and the 57th pick. Don't rule out them maybe buying a second rounder from the money they just saved on this little draft drop here. They also got a little bit of money in the Davion Mitchell deal, if I remember correctly. So, there's a little bit of money to spare here. So maybe the Raptors buy a second round pick. But my point is, even if they don't buy a second round pick, the Toronto Raptors have the 9th pick and the 39th pick in this draft. Here's what's really cool about that. If an average team had to pick between the 9th pick in this year's draft and the 19th plus 31st plus 45th plus 57th in last year's draft, they would pick the 9th pick in this draft. That's what you don't know, but it's true. That's the way draft picks are valued. Top 10, top 12 picks have a premium. And generally speaking, that's just how it's always been. So what you have, which you may be disappointed with, you're crying because you thought it was going to be 7, even though I told you it was probably going to be 8 or 9. But hey, you're crying because you got picked 9. At the same time, you're very excited about the players you picked at 19, 31, 45, and 57 last year. You're really excited about Jamison Battle, an undrafted guy that you got. And I got news for you. 2 things. Number 1, the same people who put those players on your team are the same players, same people, same brain trust, same organization, same team, same city that is going to be making the selection at number 9. Do you trust them? Well, if you trust them at 19 and 31 and 45 and 57 last year, why don't you trust them at number 9 this year? That's the first thing. And by the way, notice I'm not even including the 39th pick, which is a hell of a get and a pretty good asset in this year's draft. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I will almost guarantee you that they are way more prepared for this draft than they were for last year's draft. Last year's draft was a lot of uncertainty. The Raptors were almost 500. With the OG and Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, there wasn't a complete deal of certainty about where the roster was going to go. They probably had an idea that they could be bad, but they didn't know years in advance that they were going to be bad. When they made the Pascal Siakam trade and the OG Anunoby trades, and they started to gut their roster and they didn't bring back Fred VanVleet, the writing was on the wall. They knew they were going to be bad this year. They've known for almost 2 years they were going to be bad this year. So they've scouted the top 10 of this draft and over scrutinized every one of these prospects much more than they've probably looked at any previous draft probably in their life cycle. Masai Ujiri hasn't picked high in the draft. He hasn't. The highest pick he had was number 4, which was Scotty Barnes. The second highest pick he had, ironically, I believe, was number 9, Jakob Poeltl. The Raptors have picked number 9 3 times. DeMar DeRozan, Tracy McGrady. So it was Tracy McGrady in 97, DeMar DeRozan 2009, Jakob Poeltl 2016. Ironically, very ironically, the Raptors' best pick in 2016 wasn't Jakob Poeltl. It was their 27th pick, Pascal Siakam. You might remember him. I'll also tell you that it's somewhat ironic that the Knicks won today. OG Anunoby played well. We're gearing up for an all former Raptors starting Eastern Conference Finals. If Indiana makes it, then their second best player, and some people think their best player, is a guy that you picked at 27. The same brain trust that's picking 9th, they picked that guy at 27 in a weaker draft, by the way. The other guy was picked at 23. He had a slew of injury issues. He was your guy. That guy that pretty much carried the Houston Rockets in the playoffs to every win they got this year, that point guard, that undrafted point guard, Masai Ujiri found that guy in the undrafted heap. So, sometimes you got to just remember who's making the decisions here. Masai Ujiri is a hell of a talent evaluator. He has been very, very locked into this draft since preseason, and I promise you, it's been a lot longer than that. There's no team. I don't think there's a team. Here's what I'll say. Every team has draft boards. Y'all know this, of course. Every team scouts prospects differently. Kaman might be 5th on our board. He might be 12th on someone else's board. He might be 2nd on somebody else's board. So in the end, if the team that had him 2nd picks him at 8, that's a gift. If the team that had him 2nd picks him at 2nd, that's a reach. But that's the way draft boards work. So my question every year is, who's got the best draft board? How do you get the best draft board? Well, first, it's the legwork of actually scouting, going to these games, scouting these players, doing the damn research, reaching out to their high school coach, AAU coach, their kids, their siblings, whatever. Like you gotta do all the deep dive, all the red flags, evaluate it, whatever. That's a lot of digging, a lot of research. The second part of it is exactly who's making the decision here. I can ask all the questions. Doesn't mean I'm the right person receiving the answers. I can watch all the game film. Doesn't mean I have the eyes to actually detect what I'm watching. I can see a player hit a jump shot. It doesn't mean that I can realistically and accurately project whether that jump shot will be translatable to the NBA. So who your talent evaluators are is a very, very important thing. Your quality of talent evaluators, your quality of organization is very important. And the brain trust on this team is very important. And then the third thing that I'll say, which is obviously, a very major talking point of mine all year, which is what situation is that player coming into? The way I like to look at draft prospects is as such. I like to look at draft prospects a little bit like Kinder eggs, right? Y'all play with Kinder eggs. There's a probability that you're going to get a puzzle or you're going to get a really cool race car, but it's always a probability game, right? The draft lottery was a probability game, and drafting, unironically, is also a probability game. So you might see the 3rd pick in this year's draft as a surefire superstar. I don't see it as a surefire superstar. I see the whole world in probabilities. That's why I don't do certain things. That's why I do a lot of certain things. I always wanted to better my odds. I think in odds. That's maybe my stats degree. That's maybe just, how my brain works. But I always think in terms of probability and odds. So, for instance, when somebody lies to me about something innocuous and somewhat strange on a second date, I do the calculations. I wonder if they could lie to me about something this small. What are the chances they would lie to me about something much bigger? If they lied to me unprompted, what would they do prompted? And I do the calculations. And unless the girl is damn fire, like she has to be like the most attractive woman with the most attractive qualities on earth, I'm probably leaving that date and I'm never coming back because the probability that this person is going to be a headache at some point are just too high. You see what I mean? Probably a random anecdote, but my point is that Cooper Flagg is not a superstar. Cooper Flagg is a hypothetical. Now, factor for the factor for the variables, and you might see him as 10% role player, 30% starter, 45% something else, and maybe a 15% superstar. 15% superstar is a really, really high rate of superstardom. Believe it or not, Marvin Bagley had some superstar potential. He also had some phenomenal bust potential. Unfortunately, just like the Dallas Mavericks hit a 1.7 chance of their pick at 11 converting into the pick at 1, or their 17 combinations coming up within the first round or the first drawing. Well, just like that, just like a roulette table or poker or whatever, it's the luck of the draw. And sometimes the way I like to look at it is, what is a player but a bunch of hypotheticals, a bunch of variables? So Cooper Flagg is that. So maybe the second pick is not a 15% superstar. Maybe he has 8% superstar upside. Maybe he has 6% superstar upside. So in that case, when picking between 15% superstar versus 6% superstar, you pick 15% superstar. Even if maybe Cooper Flagg has, and I think the other cool thing about the variable argument with Cooper Flagg is the bust outcome is so low. It might be less than 1%. So that's why Cooper is safe, but he's also a high upside pick. That's the best type of first overall pick. Your Anthony Davises, your Cooper Flaggs, guys like that, right? That's kind of the point here. You want very limited downside risk and you want a lot of upside. That's how you factor in, that's how you lock in that probability. So, what's the gap between the third pick, hypothetically VJ Edgecombe, and the ninth pick, hypothetically Kaman Malawach, Colin Murray Boyles? I would say the gap is fractions of a percent, maybe 2%. If VJ Edgecombe has a 6% superstar upside, a player who's available at 9 might have a 4% upside. Do you want to cry for the next, 6 years over 2%? I don't know. Here's something really cool though, and something that I think that you should really think about a lot when you think about, the Toronto Raptors. I want to actually bring this back to something that brings me back to my late my mid 20s, my early 20s. I really wanted a shark. Right? I don't want you to imagine that I had a great white or something like that. A bamboo shark. I really wanted a bamboo shark. So I ended up getting a bamboo shark egg. You put it in the water, you try to create the best environment for that shark. You flash a light to see if the embryo is still alive. And ideally, at some point, the shark hatches. The shark egg is like 1/4 the price of buying a baby shark, because the baby shark is a more sure thing. It's not a for sure thing. It's a more sure thing because at least that it's going to hatch. They tell you that do X, Y, Z to the water to improve the odds that the shark will live through to the point that it hatches and then it'll actually survive birth. My first shark egg died. My second shark egg died. I wasn't doing a good job of controlling the water and creating the right situation, or I was phenomenally unlucky. What is for sure to me was that when I got a bamboo shark that was a living bamboo shark that was 3 months old, it lived for a pretty long time. The point that I'm making here is that the environment that you put your little embryo in, your 18, 19-year-old rookie, is going to significantly alter some of these projections that you have. Pascal Siakam at the 27th pick as a late bloomer might have had a 1% chance at stardom, all star, all NBA. You think it's a foregone conclusion. Go watch Pascal Siakam, New Mexico State. You wouldn't touch him with a first round pick. It took a very, very trained eye to see that type of talent in Pascal, because I tell you, had more people seen it, he would have been a lottery pick. More people didn't see it. But now it's very easy to say, well, that's who he was going to be. Not without the 905, not without Nick Nurse, not without Dwayne Casey, not without DeMar DeRozan. It took a lot of good environment to take that 1% all NBA outcome. Same thing with OG Anunoby, man. You want to pretend that these players just come in as a ready-made situation. They're not. Same thing with Scotty. It's the same thing with all your young players here. You got to create the environment. You got to create the training staff. You got to create all that stuff for them to actually grow. And that's what a lot of people don't really want to think about, because most people really haven't spent a great deal of time fostering anything, growing anything. You're not farmers. Y'all not farmers. I'm not a farmer. You don't understand the farmer mentality. But that is the farmer mentality. The farmer mentality is, the better I take care of my crop, the better yield I'm going to get. I don't know shit about farming, so I'm just talking out of my ass here, but you get what I'm saying here. So this player that you pick at 9, that you think is definitively worse than the player you would have gotten at 4, you don't know what environment that player that going into number 4 is. So maybe his 2%, let's say 5%. Let's say hypothetically Ace Bailey versus Carter Bryant. Let's play that hypothetical. Carter Bryant has a 2% chance at being an all NBA guy because of his length, athleticism, work ethic. It's a long path, but it is a path, and it's 2%. Let's say Ace Bailey, with his more advanced shot making, slightly bigger size, better handle, whatever, better shot making, better processing, whatever, he has a 6% chance. So you prefer the guy with a 6% chance over the guy with a 2% chance. Cool. So here's what I'll say to you. Let's say the guy with 2% chance comes into a situation that turns his 2% chance into a 4% chance. The right environment grows your odds in a positive direction, right? We can agree on that. But let's say Ace Bailey ends up in Charlotte, where he is a redundant piece, doesn't have the right leadership, and his 5% quickly dwindles to 3%. 2 years from now, you'll think it was absurd that anyone thought that Ace Bailey was a better prospect than Carter Bryant. You'll rationalize it differently. You'll say, how could you ever have done that? It'll be a little bit like, oh, I don't know, picking Chris Duarte over Alperen Sengun, or picking Davion Mitchell over Moses Moody. Some people would just be like, how'd you do that? Davion Mitchell over Trey Murphy? How'd you do that? It'll be a little bit like, oh, I don't know, picking Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic. It'll be like, what? It'll be a little bit like picking Adonis Foyle over Tracy McGrady. You'd be like, how did you not see Tracy McGrady? Mont Zion. Come on, man. That was a superstar. Wasn't a superstar, man. He was a hypothetical. Tracy McGrady was like a 4%, 3% upside superstar. And he hit. Get comfortable with probability. It's a really important thing to understand in life. I think it's important in all factors. And if you understand probability a little bit better, you'll probably understand why this draft wasn't rigged. But was it fixed? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I am on the panel in a few hours, so I'll be on that. We'll do a draft live show tomorrow on this channel, and hopefully we'll get some guests on. We'll talk this draft through. I promise you, it's not the end of the world, guys. Have a good night.